if I told you I was in the Rock Nation office, how would you feel about that? Huh? You think I was lying? That's clear enough for you?
50 Cent just torched Jim Jones for trash-talking Nas, and he brought receipts. He dropped a throwback clip that shows Jim straight up switching sides, going from calling Jay-Z soft to practically begging for a Rock Nation deal. Everybody knows 50's never rocked with Jim or Jay, but when it comes to Nas, he's got mad respect. So when Jim started talking reckless, saying he's better than Nas and even claiming he made Nas viral again, 50 wasn't having it. But what 50 just put out there ain't just about Jim disrespecting Nas, it's about Jim's whole shady track record. Dude's been moving funny for years, flipping on people left and right, especially when it comes to Jay-Z. Let's keep it real. Jim spent over 10 years dissing Jay. He was throwing shots left and right and even smacked up one of Jay's own execs. But when his career was looking shaky, suddenly Jim switched up, calling Jay a hero and chasing that Rock Nation cosign like nothing ever happened. That's the part 50 wanted the world to see. A man with zero loyalty, no real backbone, and definitely no respect for the culture he claims to rep. But that's just the start of the mess. Jim's little jab at Nas didn't just spark backlash, it gave 50 the green light to put Jim's whole game on blast. Now folks are watching Jim's moves real close and realizing it's been smoke and mirrors all along. So how did Jim go from wildin' on Jay to playing nice and begging to get signed? That's what got exposed here. See, 50 Cent don't play when it comes to calling out the fake ones, and his latest comments about Jim being Jay-Z's lapdog came after Jim straight up disrespected Nas in public. If you missed it, Jim went on a wild rant claiming he's better than Nas, and even got into it with Shannon Sharpe over it. Jim really said he could run circles around Nas in the booth. Fading around Nas right now rapping, everybody knows that, he claimed. Of course, people weren't letting that slide. Rappers came out checking Jim left and right, but instead of backing down, Jim doubled down, saying he made Nas relevant again, like Nas hadn't had hits since the Jay-Z beef days. And since Jim brought Jay-Z into it, you know 50 couldn't resist pulling up that old footage. He dropped a clip of Jim acting giddy as ever at Rock Nation HQ, cheesing hard like he didn't spend years coming for Jay. And to make it extra spicy, 50's caption on the post? Someone asked me if I have more enemies than friends. 50 really turned Jim's words into a whole expose, and folks are eating it up. I thought about it and said, yeah, poor me. I'm suffering from success. LOL. That's 50 Cent being savage again. But don't get it twisted. This wasn't just a petty jab. That caption hit deep if you know the real backstory behind Jim Jones and Jay-Z. Jim spent 13 whole years going at Jay-Z hard. Diss tracks, shade in interviews, even street fights. It wasn't just rap, it got physical, but the second it looked good for him, Jim switched up, dropped the tough guy act, and practically begged Jay for a seat at the Rock Nation table. That's the real issue. 50's not just clowning him, he's exposing the pattern. Jim's recent diss aimed at Nas? That was the spark. But now it's lighting up his whole sketchy history, and people are finally paying attention. So let's rewind. How did Jim go from dissing Jay and slapping Jay's team to pleading for a deal? Here's the full story. Back in 2002, Dame Dash brought Cam'ron and Jim Jones into Rockefeller. Cam was even promised a VP role, at least that's what Jim said. But Jay-Z, he never publicly confirmed it. Cam told the source, I don't even know if I'm gonna take the role yet. I can have it, it's mine. But Jay downplayed it completely, saying the talks were premature. That tension, it started right there. Then Jay jumped on the remix to Cam and Jules Santana's hit Oh Boy, but dropped a verse throwing shots at Nas. Cam and Jim refused to release it. Cam even erased Jay's verse, later saying he wasn't about to let Jay use their track to handle his beef with Nas. That move flipped the switch. From then on, Jim and Cam felt like Jay didn't respect them. Jim started throwing shade every chance he got, on radio, in interviews, everywhere. He painted Jay as a corporate suit, saying Jay wasn't in tune with the streets anymore. Meanwhile, Dipset, they were flashy, raw, and loud, and Jim made sure everyone knew the difference. Jay kept it quiet for a while, never clapping back directly. But the tension inside Rockefeller was palpable. Then in 2006, Jim dropped We Fly High. That song blew up. Ballin' was everywhere. Finally, Jim had a hit of his own. That's when Jay struck back. He dropped Brooklyn High, a remix of Jim's own beat. But this wasn't a tribute, it was surgical disrespect. Jay mocked Jim's whole style, his bars, even the way he said ballin'. Cold, calculated, and dismissive. Jim didn't stay quiet. He clapped back with the beef mix, flipped the beat again, and called Jay old, out of touch, and weak. But things went way beyond music after that. In 2008, Jim was caught on security footage laying hands on someone in a Louis Vuitton store. Later, it came out that the victim was Jay-Z's longtime A&R, Lenny Santiago. Jim ended up getting arrested and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. Jay? He stayed silent, publicly. But behind the scenes, the message was loud and clear. This wasn't just rap beef, it was personal now. Later that year, Jay gave an interview with XXL talking about the state of hip-hop, and he snuck in another dig at Jim. He blamed songs like Jim's Na 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 for messing up the culture. Jay said, "I mean like Jim Jones, for example. And I don't mean this because we never see eye to eye. He made Na 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 Na. What's the difference between that and Soulja Boy or Smiley Face? That could have been called Smiley Face." It was slick. Jay didn't get his hands dirty, but he still managed to clown Jim publicly. From that point on, the beef turned icy. No more disses, no more altercations, just silence. From 2010 to 2015, it was like a Cold War. Quiet tension, no resolution. But then came 2015, and Dipset dropped a freestyle over Diddy's Victory beat. And just like that, the pressure was back on. That Victory freestyle, it wasn't just bars, it was a warning shot. Jim Jones, Cameron, and Juelz Santana came out swinging, showing they still had that Dipset fire. But here's the twist. Just a year later, Jim did the unthinkable. He switched up again and showed love to Jay-Z. In 2017, the rap world was shocked when news broke that Jim Jones had officially signed with Roc Nation, the same label run by the man he spent over a decade disrespecting. People didn't know whether to laugh or call it a betrayal, after all that barking, after all those public shots. Now he's calling Jay a real one and posing for pictures under the Roc sign. The streets couldn't believe it. It was like watching someone talk big for years, then fold when the money got tight. Fans were stunned, but 50 Cent? He saw it coming. That's why he dug up the old clips and called it out. This ain't loyalty, this is survival mode. Jim tried to spin it. In interviews, he said things like, "We're grown now, and there's no beef." He even claimed that signing with Roc Nation was a smart business move. But people weren't buying it. Not after all the fighting, disses, and real-life altercations. Folks remembered when he called Jay fake, corporate, and out of touch, and now he's part of the machine he used to attack? To make it even messier, Jim went on a press run saying it was Jay-Z who reached out first. "He saw something in me," Jim said. But insiders close to Roc Nation disputed that fast, saying it was actually Jim's team who made the first move, trying to secure a lifeline while Dipset wasn't as hot anymore. And here's the kicker. Jim's first big move as a Roc Nation artist? He dropped Wasted Talent, an album full of subtle shade and emotional damage control. He wanted fans to believe it was all love now, that everything was water under the bridge. But deep down, people knew what it really was. A survival play dressed up as a peace treaty. Meanwhile, 50 Cent kept pressing. He reposted Jim's Roc Nation announcement with laughing emojis and wrote, "From gangsta to groupie, what happened, Jimmy?" That comment cut deep and sparked a storm online. Comment sections were wild, with fans calling Jim a sellout and accusing him of playing both sides too often. And let's not forget, Jay never fully embraced Jim in return. Sure, he let him on the label, but there was no big cosign, no track together, no glowing speech at a press event. It was cold business. Jay played it like a chess master. Bring your old enemy into your house, but never let him forget who holds the power. So now, after years of calling Jay soft and clowning his style, Jim was out here repping Roc Nation like he'd never said a bad word. And that's why 50 Cent's post hit so hard. It wasn't just about Nas, it was a full-blown reminder of Jim's long trail of backpedaling, broken alliances, and industry hustle moves. From street fights to signing deals, Jim's journey shows just how fast loyalty gets tossed aside when the fame starts slipping. And 50, he's making sure the world never forgets who really stood for something and who just switched up when it got convenient. But 50 wasn't done yet. He had more ammo, and he made sure the internet got every piece of it. After calling out Jim Jones for flip-flopping on Jay-Z, 50 circled right back to Jim's wild take on Nas, and that's where things really started cooking. Let's be real. Jim went way out of pocket with that Nas comment, claiming he's better than Nas? Talking like he brought Nas back to life in the rap game? That's not confidence, that's delusion. And 50 called it exactly what it was, straight up disrespect. The way 50 sees it, Nas is one of the few rappers who kept it solid, never sold out, and always represented the art form with class. So for someone like Jim, who's got a messy record full of industry stunts, to act like he's the one putting Nas on, that was a line too far. 50 even threw shade at how Jim handled his moment on Drake's track. When Jim popped up on We Set the Trends remix, featuring heavy hitters like Lil Wayne and Jules, Some fans thought he was making a comeback, but instead of building on that heat, Jim used the spotlight to start unnecessary beef with legends. Bad move. And while Jim tried to spin the Nas drama like it was all just competitive energy, 50 wasn't buying it. "That ain't competition," 50 posted. "That's desperation disguised as confidence." And boom. Just like that, the conversation flipped from rap skills to character. Meanwhile, people started digging deeper into Jim's pattern. He's clashed with Jay-Z, Nas, 50 Cent, Max B, True Life, and even his own Dipset crew at times. One fan wrote, "At this point, the only person Jim hasn't dissed is himself." That comment went viral, and 50 reposted it with a string of laughing emojis. Even Nas fans jumped in. They pulled up old interviews where Nas showed love to Dipset, even naming Cam and Jules as rappers he respected. So the fact that Jim still came at him sideways, it made Jim look ungrateful, like he was chasing clout instead of real respect. What's worse, some folks started questioning whether Jim was strategically stirring drama just to stay relevant. And with 50 Cent exposing old videos, failed beefs, and the Roc Nation deal, it was looking like Jim's career was being held together by nothing but controversy and nostalgia. To make it even spicier, whispers started circulating that Jim was salty over not getting invited to any Nas collabs. Apparently, there were talks years back about a possible track, but it never happened. And ever since then, Jim's been throwing slick shots in interviews, low-key shade that's now getting caught in the playback. But 50 wasn't just laughing, he was teaching. He used this whole situation as a lesson about the rap game. It's not about who talks loudest, it's about who stays solid. And when you line up Nas, Jay-Z, and Jim, the difference is crystal clear. Now Jim's out here trying to smooth things over, giving interviews saying he's got love for the culture, and he meant no harm. But that apology tour's too little, too late, especially when you've already spent years burning bridges and playing both sides. And that's why 50's voice hits hard in this moment. He's been watching from the sidelines, waiting for the right time to expose it all. From loyalty flips to ego trips, he laid it all out. And now the world sees Jim not as a king of the streets, but as a rapper who's constantly switched up just to keep his name alive. One thing's for sure, 50's not letting this slide. And after this latest stunt, Jim's reputation might never bounce back the same. Cam'ron and Jim Jones weren't done taking shots. The two teamed up again to mock Jay-Z and Roc Nation, clowning the entire brunch vibe, calling the label a squad of industry puppets, and even throwing shade at Beyonce. Cam rapped, "Having money don't make you a real one. You stepped on the court, you gonna play my game? Just take Shawty's advice and say my name." They were trying hard to stir up the old beef, but this time, it fell flat. Because by then, Jay-Z was on another planet. He was already a certified billionaire, married to Beyonce, collecting Basquiat's, running his own streaming platform, building a sports empire. Jay was doing mogul moves while Jim and Cam were still yelling from the sidelines. Literally. A resurfaced clip of Jay hit the internet where he compared himself to Michael Jordan, saying Jim was like the 8th guy on the bench screaming at the MVP. Oof! And that was the turning point. Jim started to realize he was just embarrassing himself. All that noise, all those years of disses, and Jay never even flinched. So what did Jim do? Exactly what 50 Cent's been roasting him for. He flipped the script again. He started begging for Jay's respect. And in February 2017, after 13 years of beef, dices, and even violence, Jim Jones officially signed to Roc Nation. Yep, the same label he built his whole career trashing. But Jim didn't do it quietly. Oh no, he suddenly started bragging about being invited to the Roc Nation brunch, the same fancy event he used to diss as fake industry stuff. Now he was cheesing in selfies, hyping up Jay as a visionary and calling him a role model. Seriously? Let's not forget, this is the same man who once slapped one of Jay's friends, called him soft, and dragged his name through the mud for years. Now, Jim was out here acting like he'd been a fan from day one. But Jay, he stayed silent as usual. No welcome post, no shout out, not even a warm smile. There's one picture of them together after the signing, and even in that, Jay looks like he'd rather be at a dentist appointment. Brr! Jim got the deal, sure, but it was clear he wasn't a partner, he wasn't a peer. He was just another artist in the Roc Nation folder, just a name. And that's where the real irony hits, because Jim spent over a decade positioning himself as the opposite of Jay. Dipset was the anti-corporate, street-certified movement, the rebels. But when the checks slowed down, Jim bent the knee. The same image he used to build his whole brand crumbled in one business meeting, and that's the exact point 50 Cent's been making loud and clear. Jim talked tough for years, but in the end, he was the one chasing the seat at the same table he used to spit on. Honestly, most folks might have let all that slide. Time passes, people move on, but Jim had to go and disrespect Nas, and that mistake dragged his entire past right back into the spotlight. And this time, people are watching closely. 50 exposed it all, clip by clip, quote by quote. Jim's track record of fake loyalty, ego flips, and shady deals is now out in the open. The receipts? Too heavy to ignore. So now the real question is, what happens next? Will Jim Jones survive this PR meltdown? Or is this the final chapter of his legacy? Because once you've clowned your way into a corner, there ain't always a way back out. Like, comment and tell us what you think. Is Jim Jones still legit, or did he sell out his own story? And don't forget to subscribe for more truth bombs, celeb exposés, and rap game realness. Only here on CelebBeatz.